Hello ladies and gentlemen and attack helicopters, this is Marcelo from ACFM and Gaming, and today we're going to talk about Planetary Assault. Planetary Assault is one of the most common topics when it comes to science fiction works, and as you know, a few of them come to mind, Starship Troopers being perhaps the, let's say, obviously the book in the matter, but in any case. So this is the Odysseus class landing combat ship. It's a frigate-sized vessel, and its main purpose is to assault planets. Assault as in landing during combat and deploying some form of infantry or mechanized infantry, or in some works is mechs or people wearing power armor, or tanks, VTOLs. And in this case, the case of the ship that I have here, Space Engineers, I designed this to deploy tanks and VTOLs, which is what we have right now. So difference between assault and attack is mainly to destroy, and assault implies that kind of deployment, that kind of capturing or possession of an enemy position, and that at least that's how I understand it. Now, this ship is frigate size, and frigate is the maximum that I would go when it comes to landing on a planet, mainly because as interesting as helicarriers or hover carriers, aero carriers are, in a universe in which you have interplanetary travel, they really don't make much sense, because then there is the implication that space superiority can be achieved, and such a craft would be really hard to defend against just a satellite or just dropping a rock from orbit at a ridiculous speed. So at least in the faction that I'm building, considering that is part of the universe of Space Engineers, the jump drive and all that, the biggest ship that I would like to put inside of a planetary gravity well is going to be a frigate vessel, because it's the mass to thrust ratio, it's favorable to it still, and it's also not the most expensive ship that you're going to put in. And if you're going to have a carrier, you may as well have it in orbit, and you can just keep deploying things from the planet. That is how, at least theoretically, it works in not just hardcore science fiction, but also the more fantasy-like. So this one, you have seen it already in the workshop. If you follow the channel and follow my 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 workshop, it has space for this ramp. Was made by Mike Angel, I have to say, an amazing ramp. It has space for 4 craft. That is more than enough when it comes to real life Space Engineers online gameplay. And the idea is that this craft would also support the vehicles that it launches. For that, it has only 2 rocket turrets, because rocket turrets are actually, they work better against tanks, against slow-moving targets, but they're kind of wasteful still, and you cannot compare their firepower with this, a wall of Gatlings. They just melt things. Those are using the Whiplashes 1-for-1, the turret's flavor script. So they have a designator, and then the turret follows a designator. It really shreds ground vehicles to pieces, and also like attack craft, like VTOLs or fighters. So moving on, another concept that I want to explore here is the fact that well, I call it handhold jump. And like I said, I want my ships to work with each other. It's not like, oh, this is a cool ship, oh, this is another cool ship, and then you build them together and you're playing with your friends in co-op, or something like that, PvP or PvE, and then you realize that you cannot really use them that well in conjunction. So for that matter, I have, like I mentioned in a previous video, I have switched over to this protruding airlock docking collar, which is still WMI standard, but it uses a Ceph design of extruding it a little bit. The idea is that you can do handhold jumps, and what we have down here is a work in progress, is the Atlas II strategic transport. The idea behind this thing is a cross between a landing ship tank and a cargo plane, and I'll talk about it in a minute. So with that kind of docking collar, you can dock 2 of these to the 2 sides of the landing craft, the landing combat ship, sorry, the frigate, let's call it frigate for now, or you can dock 2 frigates to the size of this one. Now all of them are jump capable, so you are able to jump your force right on top of a planet and then move downwards. Or you can, stagger them. Then you launch the 2 frigates or just the frigate first, because it's a combat ship, and then this one follows. And this is gonna carry, the bulk of the forces. Being a larger ship, it can carry, I think, between 10 or 8 tanks and vehicles, maybe even more if you attach them to the top. Attach the, maybe the vehicles towards the top, and then you have to come up with a way of deploying them mid-air. Would be interesting. So that's the idea, and also, if you choose to, it can carry a single one of these. It could be any of the combat variants of the LS1, meaning Landship 1, that I have designed. So why did I choose to use one cargo plane or one cargo dropship versus just one big tank? It's because, like I mentioned before, there are some concepts that really don't hold up to gameplay, at least in Space Engineers, or even in a hardcore sci-fi setting, or any kind of setting actually. For example, the helicarrier is one of those. Like I said before, it's also the land carrier for that matter. If we have, for example, like the ones that you see in the Marvel movies, the Shield helicarrier, and in Deserts of Karak, the land carrier, those exist in universe in which they are the top of the line technology and there's nothing else above them, right? So literally above them. Now for the land carrier in Deserts of Karak, we know that the lore of that game, there is this taboo about space exploration that the people of Karak are trying to overcome, and it's a planet in which the deserts are bigger than the oceans. There is oceans on Karak, like on the north and southern poles, but they're more like like land. Is landlocked sea, I think. Well, like the Dead Sea, things like that. Smaller seas, more like bigger lakes. So most of the trading, most of the exchange routes and all the movement of things and people are going to be made over land. And it's also part of the art style of the franchise, having like large vehicles. So having no space superiority or no any kind of activity in space allows for such craft to exist. Now I have made the Olympus class. I don't even call it a carrier because of that. The large let's say carrier, okay, quote unquote, that builds these ones, and that is not meant to be transported into space, to a different planet, because if you have a ship that is big enough to transport that land carrier, then that ship may as well be a space carrier, and you launch your fighter craft and your bombers from that ship. So I have decided, to go in more like a real present day, military style, in which like a Galaxy cargo plane, can carry a few ground vehicles, like a few helicopters, or maybe like one single tank if it's too heavy. So that was the idea. And honestly, at least in Space Engineers, you don't need these, many of large crawlers, unless you have one or two, and those are the bases that you operate from, to use these smaller ones. Because again, like all of those principles apply. If you have a faction that can launch fighter craft, these are really weak. Well, not weak, they're really vulnerable to them. Any kind of air-to-ground missile is gonna just ruin your day. You lose one wheel, then you're gonna have to lose a lot of traction. The vehicle is gonna be uneven, and they only make sense on the like on the moon, like the Luna kind of moon, the Martian planet. But the alien planet, or any planet that has vegetation, or a really rough geography, they're not going to be that useful. So that's why I chose to have this carry only one of these. Okay, now on the topic of the land crawlers, I designed this so you can build off the smaller bogies or craft from it. And as you can see here, I added that little, like printing block thingy in. Just, too easy. You can then grind it down manually if you want, or you can, have that piece actually welded to the printer pad and just remove one single block. Is, up to you. So you turn on the projector. Let's see, it's not working for a reason. There it is. Projection is on. Then you turn on the welders and you reverse the piston. I set the piston to be the slowest that it can. That shake. So in survival you can actually build the thing, because it takes time to place the components and then weld them together. As you can see, as the vehicle moves outside of the collision box of the welders, the blocks are gonna be welded. Now, while that happens, I have to mention that these can also build, the other rovers that I have made before. Anything that fits in a 3x3. It can also build the wider rovers, the ones that have 5x5 space, but then you will have to add the wheels manually, which is not a big deal. So in any case, this is what I wanted to do. Have a faction that works in conjunction. And maybe, as you can see, my game is really slow, and this is not a realistic representation of what you would see, sadly. Let's hope that the game gets fixed to that level in which we can, use these vehicles with our friends, one controlling each and stuff like that. But at this point, I just want them to make sense in lore, in the world building that I'm, doing with this faction, rather than having them all existing in a single scene in Space Engineers. They can, right? But maybe we're not gonna get the best performance. But it's 2 out of 3, lore, logic in which the vehicles lock to each other and function with each other, and then performance, which is the third leg that is not that stable. And now, speaking of mysteries, I don't know why the wheel doesn't weld, but again, it's nothing that you can overcome, that you cannot overcome. You just go in here and no, these ones, you add the wheels. Maybe it would be useful to have a button to spams add wheel, or maybe you write a small code for that. And that's it. At this point you can just detach. Oh, everything is slow-mo. Just drive away. And like I always say, if you like the video, you know where to click. Share this with your friends. Try the vehicles, let me know anything that you find, how you like them, why you didn't like them, if they do something funky. And take care and keep playing.